Good morning, everybody. Today starts our video of our readings. So, I am going to be using my paperback book as my reference for my pages, and I will be starting with where second period left off because and it's only like 2 pages behind where the rest of the classes were. But by the end of today, we should all be caught up, and we should all be in the same spot for tomorrow. So we'll just be reading kind of chapter by chapter, and then when there's longer chapters, I'll obviously break it up, but we should be pretty much on the same page for each class. So I am starting on page 146 and 147 in paperback book, and in the hardback book, I will be starting on 160 to 161. Here we go. Follow along with me, and it'll be really awkward if you're just staring at me the whole time while I'm reading, so you might want to have your book out and actually reading while I'm reading. That will be very helpful, and don't laugh at my voices. So I'm going to make voices. Okay, I'm going to start off with on page 146, right below where it says, "You owe me 3 farthings," that little poem. Start right after that. I can't remember how it goes on after that, but anyway, I remember it. It ends up, "Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head." It was like the 2 halves of a countersign, but there must be another line after the bells of Old Bailey. Perhaps it could be dug out of Mr. Charrington's memory if he were suitably prompted. "Who taught you that?" he said. It's Winston. "My grandfather. He used to say it to me when I was a little girl. He was vaporized when I was 8. At any rate, he disappeared. I wonder what a lemon was," she asked inconsequently. "I've seen oranges. They're a kind of round yellow fruit with a thick skin." "I can remember lemons," said Winston. "They were quite common in the 50s. They were so sour that it set your teeth on edge, even to smell them." "I bet that picture's got bugs behind it." "Gross," said Julia. "I'll take it down and give it a good cleaning someday. I suppose it's almost time you were leaving. I must start washing this paint off. What a bore. I'll get the lipstick off your face afterwards." Because remember, she came to the room and then she put on a bunch of makeup to surprise Winston. So now she's got to take it off because she's not allowed to have it. Winston did not get up for a few minutes more. The room was darkening. He turned over toward the light and lay gazing into the glass paperweight. The inexhaustibly interesting thing was not the fragment of coral, but the interior of the glass itself. There was such a depth of it, and yet it was almost as transparent as air. It was as though the surface of the glass had been the arch of the sky, enclosing a tiny world with its atmosphere complete. He had the feeling that he could get inside it, and that, in fact, he was inside it, along with the mahogany bed and the gate-leg table and the clock and the steel engraving and the paperweight itself. The paperweight was the room he was in, and the coral was Julia's life, and his own, fixed in a sort of eternity at the heart of the crystal. Chapter 5. Slime had vanished. A morning came and he was missing from work. A few thoughtless people commented on his absence. Now, why are they thoughtless? I know you can't respond, but if you could, why are they thoughtless people? Well, they're thoughtless because if somebody's vanished, they're not supposed to ever have existed, so you're not supposed to talk about them. You're just supposed to assume that if you come in and they're gone, they're gone. So don't talk about them because they're dead and they never existed. They're unpersons now. On the next day, nobody mentioned him. On the 3rd day, Winston went into the vestibule of the records department to look at the notice board. One of the notices carried a printed list of the members of the chess committee, of whom Syme had been one. It looked almost exactly as it had looked before. Nothing had been crossed out, but it was one name shorter. It was enough. Syme had ceased to exist. He had never existed. The weather was baking hot. In the Labyrinth Ministry, the windowless, air-conditioned rooms kept their normal temperature, but outside the pavement scorched one's feet, and the stench of the tubes at the rush hour was a horror. The preparations for Hate Week were in full swing, and the staffs of all the ministries were working overtime. Processions, meetings, military parades, lectures, waxwork displays, film shows, telescreen programs all had to be organized. Stands had to be erected, effigies built, slogans coined, songs written, rumors circulated, photographs faked. Julia's unit in the fiction department had taken off the production of novels and was rushing out a series of atrocity pamphlets. Winston, in addition to his regular work, spent long periods every day in going through the back files of the Times and altering and embellishing news items which were to be quoted in speeches. Late at night, when crowds of rowdy proles roamed the streets, The town had a curiously febrile air. The rocket bombs crashed oftener than ever, and sometimes in the far distance there were enormous explosions which no one could explain and about which there were wild rumors. The new tune, which was to be the theme song of Hate Week, the Hate Song it was called, had already been composed and was being endlessly plugged on the telescreens. It had a savage, barking rhythm which could not exactly be called music, but resembled the beating of a drum. Roared out by hundreds of voices to the tramp of marching feet, it was terrifying. The proles had taken a fancy to it, and in the midnight streets it competed with the still popular It Was Only a Hopeless Fancy. The parson's children played it at all hours of the night and day, unbearably, on a comb and a piece of toilet paper. Winston's evenings were fuller than ever. Squads of volunteers, organized by parsons, were preparing the street for Hate Week, stitching banners, painting posters, erecting flagstaffs on the roofs, and perilously slinging wires across the streets for the reception of streamers. Parsons boasted that Victory Mansion alone would display 400 meters of bunting. He was in his native element and as happy as a lark. The heat and the manual work had even given him a pretext for reverting to shorts and an open shirt in the evenings. He was everywhere at once, pushing, pulling, sawing, hammering, improvising, jollying everyone along with camaraderie and exhortations, and giving out from every fold of his body what seemed an inexhaustible supply of acrid-smelling sweat. Gross. A new poster had suddenly appeared all over London. It had no caption and represented simply the monstrous figure of a Eurasian soldier, 3 or 4 meters high, striding forward with expressionless Mongolian face and enormous boots, a submachine gun pointed from his hip. From whatever angle you looked at the poster, the muzzle of the gun, magnified by the foreshortening, seemed to be pointed straight at you. The thing had been plastered on every blank space on every wall, even outnumbering the portraits of Big Brother. What's the point of this poster? Something we gotta think about. So they have this huge poster on the wall, and it's got this guy with a Mongolian looking face, they say. And remember when we saw the caravan of people that when Winston and Julie were first meeting in the square, who were the slaves, the prisoners? They were the Mongolians who were being taken as prisoners of war. So they're the enemy. They're the enemy of this country that we're in right now. They're the enemy of the party, and they're using this expressionless Mongolian face and the fact that they have a machine gun on his hip, they say. So wherever you are in the square, it looks like the machine gun is pointing at you. So what is that supposed to do? To incite fear, to incite panic, make people angry. When you have something like that that's always watching you, it kind of makes you a little bit paranoid because you can't ever get away from that face. Okay, that's something to think about. The proles, normally apathetic about the war, were being lashed into one of their periodical frenzies of patriotism. As though to harmonize with the general mood, the rocket bombs had been killing larger numbers of people than usual. One fell on a crowded film theater in Stepney, burying several hundred victims among the ruins. The whole population of the neighborhood turned out for a long, trailing funeral, which went on for hours and was in effect an indignation meeting. Another bomb fell on a piece of waste ground, which was used as a playground, and several dozen children were blown to pieces. So, I'm going to read on a little bit and then I'm going to ask you a question. There were further angry demonstrations. Goldstein was burned in effigy. Hundreds of copies of the poster of the Eurasian soldier, the one that we just identified, the Mongolian-looking one, were torn down and added to the flames, and a number of shots were looted in the turmoil. Then a rumor flew around the spies were directing the rocket bombs by means of wireless waves, and an old couple who were suspected of being of foreign extraction had their house set on fire and perished of suffocation. So first of all, what's the point of putting up a poster just to have everybody tear it down? I'll give you a minute. I know this is a little awkward, but... So when I think of, okay, well, why would the party put up a poster of this Eurasian soldier just to have people tear it down? I think of the fact that this is Hate Week, right? And if they live in a constant state of being really, really angry at Goldstein and at the party and everything, then this Hate Week might not be that momentous for them. But if you put up all of these new things, all these new posters that are menacing, that seem very threatening, you incite this new kind of panic in people, right? Because you might just get so used to just Goldstein, the Eurasian Army, that they might not be as like vigorous about hate week as the party wants them to be. So you put up all these new posters, you have all of these new slogans and all these new songs, and then you let people tear them down, and they burn them, and they feel very empowered and like, I'm so angry, I'm doing a really great job, right? So the second question is, who is dropping the bombs? Now I know 5th and 6th period had the opportunity to talk about this, but 2nd period did not. So this says that, let's go back. This says that the spies were directing the rocket bombs. But if we use our critical thinking, we can pretty much assume that who's actually directing the bombs? It's probably the party, okay? And so that leads us to another question of, why would the party be blowing up people right now? Why would they blow up a ton of children? Why would they blow up all of these people? They're killing their own people, right? And so I think, again, like with the Mongolian soldier and his poster, we have to think about, what week is this? It's hate week, right? And if everybody's just so used to the pain and suffering and loss of everyday life, then they're not going to be that emphatic about hate week. So what do? Murder a few children. Incite some more hate, right? Because who do we care about most dying? Puppies and children, right? Like in books and movies, who do you care about most when they're dying? You care about the puppies and the children. They just killed a bunch of children. So who are we mad at now? We're really mad at Goldstein now because he killed a bunch of children, and we're more revved up than ever. Something to think about.